Welcome to the second episode of the Commute to Me podcast. I am stoked to have with me today Connor Koblinski, who is, among many things, an AI educator, a former classroom teacher, and somebody who is on the cutting edge of a lot of the emerging technologies that we are using day in and day out. And just like me, he happens to be an entrepreneur who is furthering the cause of education in many parts of the world. Connor, it's awesome to have you.
Hey, what's up, Farhan? Really happy to be here with you today. Excited to chat, man.
I think our listeners will have a lot of great, takeaways from your session with us today. I'm curious, Connor, in your own words, how would you describe your career and what influenced you to be who you are today?
Yeah, sure. I feel like when you're a generalist and you jump around, this question is always really hard, right? And so I first and foremost describe myself as an educator and an entrepreneur. I say I do educational consulting, but a lot of times what that breaks down to is that I make interesting e-learning for people. So I make modules. But in terms of how I got into this career and doing a lot of different things, I just knew I wanted to be in education because I benefited so much from the educational systems I went through. We just found out we grew up very close to each other. I moved a lot when I was growing up and I saw a lot of school systems. But the school system I spent the most time in was just outside of Detroit. It was a very wealthy, privileged school system, and I got incredible interventions. And even in the school systems that didn't have the same wealth, my parents advocated and found external resources. I'm somebody who has dyslexia, specifically in auto processing. So, not something that like every teacher knows how to deal with. And I got the right interventions at the right time. As a 16-year-old, very inspired 16-year-old, I looked around and I said, who's doing the most good in the world? Specifically to me, it's been these teachers who have intervened and helped me make sense of the world and helped me deal with my emotions and this whole thing. And so I knew I wanted to be a part of it. I went to school to be a teacher, and then I threw my parents for a real curveball by joining a startup. I was excited at the idea of building something, figuring out my job, and getting to do the parts of my job I love the most. And we still worked in education. We sold services to schools around social emotional learning, helping their teachers understand the growth mindset. It was like I got paid to do research. So, of course, I wanted to do that. I went back into the classroom and started gathering all these interesting experiences. After being in the classroom, I had been doing my own little side businesses. And I was like, I really want to be in the entrepreneurial world again. And that's when I jumped out about 3 years ago and started doing whatever anyone would pay me to do in terms of education strategy and coaching people on how to use AI tools that I was using myself as a practitioner. And I would describe that like why I do this is because I enjoy a new challenge every day. And how I've been able to do it is because I have a very patient wife who has saw that I was not happy in certain parts of my previous education roles and really supported me into trying a bunch of different things.
There's a lot that we have in common here. Chief among them, I think, a supportive partner who is willing to, be on this journey with us as we really explore how to not only provide value, but also find those opportunities which are all around us, but require time and energy and a lot of be able to discover. So you mentioned your upbringing definitely influenced the interventions that you were exposed to, the communities that you were a part of, had an influence on who you are today. What would you say is, you're kind of reflecting on this a little bit more meta, when we think about the tools that are available today that perhaps were not available when we were growing up, how can educators who are dealing with students that come from perhaps neurodiverse backgrounds, or they don't fit the mold of what we would consider the average student, how do some of the tools that we have access to today actually help move the needle when it comes to serving those students?
First, I try to be really humble, right? We don't have the research on this. My number one thing is we need to get more researchers, these tools. We need to be looking at this. And there's some stuff out there that says there's a delta when we put kids in front of a chatbot. In what setting, right? If I just text a kid a link to a chatbot and say, hey, learn about ancient history, that's probably not the most effective intervention. But can we find ways to install this cutting edge technology in a way that is engaging students much more than before? Yeah, absolutely. So, my number one piece of advice for teachers is you don't have to put AI chatbots in your classroom tomorrow if that's a huge technological challenge for you. Instead, use AI in the software we have today to do one step higher in terms of what you're providing for your students. So if you are used to providing PowerPoints with really colorful pictures, but sometimes you struggle to find the exact right image or artifact, practice using AI to make that exact right artifact. If you're really comfortable with PowerPoints and all those things and generating AI images, go and find some video that's been generated by AI that's going to show your students what ancient Rome looks like as an exciting hook at the beginning of your unit. Don't build your whole world around these tools, but what is the immersive thing that you can do? If you're a teacher and you don't have access to a lot of resources, guess what? We now live in a world where there are certain e-readers where a voice reading along with you is built into the program and costs $0. Where are the ways that we can find where we're adding layers to this experience? If images cost us less to do, if video costs us less to do, if creating a video game for my students is eventually going to be as easy as typing in an AI prompt that says, make an engaging game that teaches my students about X, Y, or Z, why would we not use those leveled up versions of engagement?
I think educators, there's so much out there in terms of AI tools. At least I speak from personal experience, subscribe to a bunch of newsletters, and actually actively seek out what's happening in the AI space on a daily basis. It could seem overwhelming.
To be clear, it is overwhelming. I professionally keep up with what's going on and I'm constantly like, wait, what? That happened 2 months ago? That happened a year ago? I didn't even see it.
But the good news is there are tools. So if you are looking for something that would meet the needs of your students, chances are there is something on the market or something that's being developed that can meet those needs. It's just about trying to find, maybe setting aside the time, working with others within the educator community to hone in on those best practices and those best tools. Would that be fair to say, Connor?
Yeah, totally. Ethan Mollick, who's somebody I encourage everyone to read if you're trying to figure out how AI works, he talks about the jagged edge of AI, where it's like some tasks it's going to help us with, some tasks it's going to be better than us, and some tasks
Mhm.
it's going to fail at for a really long time. And so we don't know where that is. And then if you're not really steeped in the jagged edge and you don't know what AI is good or bad at doing, there are things that people are selling you. Hey, $25 a month. You need our subscription. You need our specific tool that does this. And it's like, hey, no, me and you and ChatGPT in 5 minutes could figure out how to do this thing that someone's trying to sell you a subscription to. And I think
Mm.
it is specifically overwhelming for that reason, where it's, do I need a $20 a month subscription to this tool, or could I just put this together myself? And I think that depends on how adventurous you are and is it fun for you, I think is also something you should consider.
Absolutely. I just got off a call with the team that I'm working with, and some of the applications of AI tools are still not, people are not aware of them, right?
Mhm.
And to your point, Connor, so much of what we used to do manually, even just a few years ago, can now be supercharged from a productivity standpoint using tools that are readily available. So I always encourage folks, the best way to learn and adopt tools is to have real world examples and project to apply them to. Application will drive adoption.
Yeah. I want to bring this AI conversation into the education conversation, which is just to say, like, people are panicking and being like, AI is slowing down. If you feed it another 10 billion words, it doesn't immediately get smarter. Oh no, like OpenAI isn't worth all this money. And I'm just like, if you do you understand that if AI got stupider today, it would take us 10 years to teach everyone how to use AI and integrate it into our systems. There's so much education that needs to be done in terms of accessing what these tools can do that we have plenty of work. These tools don't need to get smarter for us to have an incredible amount of work to do in terms of helping people maximize their output. I don't think work needs to always be about maximizing your output, but it also gives you access to creative things. I'm a much better designer. I'm terrible at design by myself, but I'll take screenshots of what I design and put it in AI and say, is this good? And it gives me feedback that's good enough for me to be a little bit better today. We have so much education to do about just how to use what we already have.
Yeah, that's, I think it's a very valuable observation that we sometimes lose sight of given the breakneck speed of everything that's developing around us, right? So I want to take this conversation in a little bit of a different direction, because one of the things that I really enjoyed when I got to know you and follow your work was your focus on community building. And that is central to what I am also working to spearhead as a part of this podcast, as a part of the initiatives that I run. I have always believed that learning cannot happen in silos. Learning happens when communities come together, when learners are learning from each other. When I mention a learning centric community, you've developed so many of them, but what comes to mind for you? Like, what defines a community that is centered on learners?
I think it's a really good question, right? And like that's the highest level that we're trying to achieve. once people are teaching each other in the community, and sometimes that happens organically. I've been a part of
Mhm.
learning communities like America Needs You, which is an incredible nonprofit. And I mean, they have a great curriculum. I think it's great curriculum. I helped write it. But everyone says the real secret sauce of that organization is that you get young professionals who have a lot of questions and slightly older mentors in the same room. And then you just let these people interact. You really don't need to socially engineer that situation that much. In fact, socially engineering it can be too much. Like the social engineering is getting these two groups in the same room and letting them interact. And then when we do things like have them bring resumes, have them do mock interviews, have them do these simulations, then we bring that learning to the next level. But there is something of the value of just like when you get the right people in the room, that's half the battle. Someone recently reminded me, Mike Yates from the Redesign Lab. I was at a session of his that really redefined how I think about success. He's talking about hip hop metrics. And it's like, look, if people are showing up, that's the metric. If people are coming to your sessions, that's the metric. These people are interacting with each other. Again, I just want to say that's the highest level that we want to get to is everyone is teaching each other. But I think sometimes people do want to just do the thing of like, all right, everyone teach each other. And that only works in that ideal scenario where you've put the perfect right people together in the room, right? I think we need to model that for people. That's one of those mid steps in between. And I think that you just have to have a realistic understanding of who do you have in the room. If you don't
Yeah.
understand who your community is, you don't know how to access them, right? And the number of times that someone's been speaking on stage and there's somebody sitting in the front row who has really vital information that can say it way more succinctly and more interesting. That's every time anyone ever gives a speech. But do you have the insight of who is that person you should hand the microphone at the right time? And I think that's
Mhm.
what being a great facilitator is, knowing who your people are and who you can hand the microphone off to.
Yeah, and I think so much of it is also, to your point, the community showing up is half the battle, being present, being involved, but also on the part of the facilitator or, the individuals who take it upon themselves to nurture the community. One thing that I have run into as a positive challenge or outcome of building communities is in creating meaningful engagement, sustaining that community, because just like anything that requires care and time, you have to have inputs that are the number of connections that folks are making, that are inspiring people to think about different things as this community centered learning is taking place. In your experience, Connor, what are some of the things that enable folks like us to create engagement when it comes to learning?
So I think specifically how you phrase this question of like, how do we get people coming back? How do we sustain these communities? I
Yeah.
think the answer, my number one answer is never waste anyone's time.
Mm.
Never waste anyone's time ever. The second I feel myself doing fluff or busy work as an educator, I'm more likely to just give that time back to the people than try to fill it. Right. And sometimes as a classroom teacher, you can't say like, all right, kids, pack it up, get out of here. But you can find other uses like, all right, everyone just start reading the book until we're ready to do something effective again. And I think what that is that's a trust and an expectation thing. Like expectations actually drive our habits and who we are so much more than we realize. It's the narrative that we're telling ourselves as a classroom teacher,
Mhm.
as a facilitator at conferences, or even in an online sense. I want your story to be Connor runs a tight ship. And when we walk in the door, we are doing things and we are using our time productively. Everyone knows the outcome, and then we're done. When people have that narrative of you and who you are, they trust you with their time. That's what you're ultimately asking people to do. For me, it's humbling to ask people for their time. I think you just got to have a respect for it. And I try to think about that very frequently. Is this worth 20 people stopping their lives and listening to me?
As somebody who's attended one of your AI aerobics sessions, Connor, I would say you knocked that out the park. Again, you walk into your session, you know exactly what you're expecting, and you're able to really apply immediate learnings to your day-to-day workflows that actually impact your productivity, impact your engagement, whatever you're working on. So you do practice what you preach, Connor.
I love that. And that's the other educator trick. People need to know what they've experienced from you. And so the trick is tell people what they're going to learn, teach them the thing, and then tell them what they learn. When they walk away from the session, their friends like, oh, they'll be like, oh, I just went to this great AI session. And it's what'd you learn? And they're able to tell you, actually, because you hit it 3 times and you like formed the learning in that way, people are
Yeah.
then able to regurgitate it, which reinforces in their mind, oh, this is valuable. I now have an interesting anecdote as I'm getting cocktails with my friends because I can explain this myself.
It goes back to the idea where the apex of a learning community is when learners are learning from each other,
Mhm.
right? The apex of engagement is when these folks that have gone through your experience are evangelizing on your behalf without you even telling them to, right? You've proven to them the value. You've demonstrated the outcome that they can gain from your intervention, and then they're the ones out there really nurturing that in their circle. Again, sustains the community, brings more individuals into your community, and furthers the goals of everybody, really. I would love to understand, going back a little bit to the emerging technology space, as somebody who, willingly immerses himself in these technologies on a day-to-day basis, what are you most excited about? I mean, maybe in 2 months, it might be a whole different set of things that you're excited about, but as of right now, kind of ending 2024, what are some of the things that really excite you about this space?
So education, um, I'm not as confident. We recently, again, we're recording this at the end of 2024 and saw Khan recently timidly stepped away from chatbots and was like, maybe they're not entirely the answer for that reason I mentioned earlier. What's the structure? What's the reason for a kid to sit down and learn about ancient history from a chatbot? There still needs to be this macro structure that drives the experience. These things are predicting the next best word, which doesn't mean that they're the best at engagement. I think that in terms of one thing, let me just speak optimistically about something I'm excited about, which is for workforce development. I'm interested in the idea of simulations. I'm working with a company right now, and we're providing simulations for call centers. It's called Ready. The idea is using AI to simulate a customer so that these people can get better at their jobs quicker. If we have the ability to give a greater experience, let's use AI to do that. Some of the things I'm using is using AI to write really simple code to provide gamification elements. So just saying, hey, pick a random number 1 through 6 and then have something happen in the code as a result of that. It's giving me the ability to expand my skills as a game designer. And then also it's given me the ability to expand my skills as a data analyst. And I think those are the two big things I'm seeing. People taking unstructured data and being able to organize it really quickly. If I was a teacher in the classroom today, I would be using that to do skills-based grading because you have this ability to take all this unstructured data around Common Core standards and quickly structure it using these tools. We need to teach people how to use these tools if we expect them to do those kind of things. Or someone needs to create a perfect app that we can subscribe to for $20 a month to do this for us. But then the other thing is just, again, people being able to write code for themselves to change these applications. I'm excited about learning technology in the same way I'm excited about games, which is that games have changed a lot recently and that games have this ability for you to design the game while you're playing it. Animal Crossing, Minecraft, these are common games we understand where the user gets to design the world around them and it influences. But there's other games like Slay the Spire and deck card building games are some of the most popular games that exist right now. And that's because you, as the user, get to create the experience for yourself. I think that's the future of learning education, where you are able to sit down and through a command prompt or through something, you are able to say, I need a website for my students. It needs to look like this. It's going to have a spot for them to turn in homework. And this is what it's going to look like. Please help me structure all of this unorganized data. And you're going to have a Google Classroom that perfectly fits your needs and you don't have to conform yourself to Google Classroom. Google Classroom will conform itself to your needs. And to be clear, this is
Yeah.
like my optimistic long shot for the next 2 years. But to speak optimistically about what I think is going to happen, that's the paradigm shift I think that we are facing here, where I don't need to learn how to speak programming. The computer had to learn how to speak English, right?
Absolutely. Wow, that's very exciting. Maybe the next 2 years, we're gonna be able to have technology, capable of doing that,
And to
right?
be clear, I think a savvy teacher who already knows something about coding could go to O1 on ChatGPT and could spin up a website like this in a tenth of the time it would have taken them beforehand with no coding experience. But we'll see some commodified version of this in the future, I hope.
So, one other question that comes to mind for me as we think about community, I'm in touch with a lot of folks that are actively nurturing communities in their own domains or areas of expertise. in various parts of the world, actually. Another aspect of, I think, where you and I both share this love of travel, this love of digital nomading, exploring different parts of the world, finding opportunities, and education really is a common denominator to bring people together no matter where they are, geographically. So there's this need, at least in the circles that I'm involved in, where people are really eager to build communities. And you have done that. And we've touched on this concept within this podcast. But if somebody out there listening to this is inspired by what we're saying and they want to go out and build their own community, what steps should they take? What would you advise them to do?
I appreciate this question because it lets me hit on the last point I wanted to make that I think I missed earlier about like how do we make effective and engaging communities? And I think that part of the way that we make those communities is by putting the subject at the center. Parker J. Palmer talks about this idea of we had this traditional thing of the classroom, there's the master of knowledge at the front, and the knowledge is behind them, and they have to disseminate it slowly out because that's how they have value, is that they've holding the knowledge behind them. The reality of a community-based learning system is that knowledge is at the center of the classroom, and all learners and guides are centered around the subject looking in. My advice for you is pick something you're curious about and show people that curiosity and excitement. Put it at the center of what you are doing and be humble about yourself. I see a lot of people talking about AI on LinkedIn and the circles that we're in, and they're like, I'm an expert. And I'm like, why would you say that you're an expert in this technology that has only existed for a couple of years? What does the word expert mean? You have to break it down for me. I'm an intensely curious person around AI. And I think that is how I have brought other people into my community, is that they have seen my curiosity. I'm sharing my struggles with them, and they want to be a part of that. They're experiencing a similar story that I am at the now, and so they want to compare notes with me. Put the thing at the front, at the center, pick something you're curious about, and be humble about yourself. The second we're in these moments of a fixed mindset where it's I'm panicking because I have to prove to everyone that I know this much so that I have value in this community, I think that inauthenticity drives people away.
I love what you shared, Connor. And as I listen to you, I like to think in groups of three as a mental model when I'm learning something new or when I'm listening to somebody speak. So, curiosity, humility, and authenticity are the three that I'm taking away from what you just shared, right? Where curiosity really fuels your own interest in building that community, that knowledge that is the center of the community. Humility really is what you carry with you every day. I'm not an expert. I know there are tons of things I don't know. And part of the reason I'm building the community is so we can all learn from one another and we can expose each other's expertises and gaps and learn from those gaps, right? And authenticity. Everybody bringing their true versions to the community, trying to foster that and uphold that as much as possible. Those are the three that I take away. Would those be, is that a fair summary, Connor?
Yeah, absolutely. Pick something you're
Yeah.
curious about. Don't
Yeah.
overstretch yourself or oversell yourself. Stay humble
Yeah.
and be authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. I think in terms of parting words, what would you like to leave with our audience? Where can folks find you? Where can they learn more about your work? And what's in store? I'd love you to share.
I'm doing too many things these days. Number one thing you can do is just find me, reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I don't use it much, but I post some videos. I'm also on YouTube. I've been posting a lot of YouTube videos recently talking about AI, how to use it both in your work life, but also specifically for teachers a little bit. And again, all of those are CBK Learning or Connor Koblinski. You can find me out there. And then I would just say that in terms of parting words, like if you're starting an educational community online, good luck and have fun with it. You and I have talked about the dangers of quitting your day job. I've always been drawn to the entrepreneurial spirit because it's very different when you're building something for yourself and when you're building something for other people. It's just a very different type of work that I find incredibly engaging. And reach out if you want to connect and talk about building cool shit with cool people, because that's always what I've wanted to do.
Great, great words to live by there, Connor. Let's all strive to build cool shit with cool people. Connor, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you again for your time.
Cheers, Farhan. Really appreciate it.